The weary traveler draws close to the end of the path.
We have never had it so good.
All of this just works.
We are selling tea to China.
You did not have to redeem this, ma'am.
Out with them, forget about them.
Your broadcast is very biased. You've written a lot of ridiculous articles, so I would encourage you to be more journalistic and have more integrity.
Socialism is when the government does stuff.
Hello everyone, and welcome back for the second episode of the Longhouse, now in 2025. This week we have a bit of a grab bag of topics, I suppose. And then Luddic Path, of course, who is our trusty co-host. Someone commented that you always thank me for coming back on, even though you've sort of been a staple of this show since the beginning on the last video. And I had to comment that you're essentially an H1B hire, right, on this podcast.
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you. Much appreciation. So, if you like a coffee, so okay. So we'll stop the thankfulness. I'll just thank the audience, I guess, for tuning in, and I'll take you for granted from.
I mean,
you
told me before we started that you do have a couple of sort of unpopular opinions, one might say, that you wanted to air in this episode. So we will get into that.
As tradition, I think. But there's I've just noticed that now that I'm on Twitter, and there really has been an exodus of leftists from Twitter. This cannot be denied at this point.
No, of course not. And Blue Sky didn't help either.
No, I mean, that's where they are. This is like 4chan, where you have Paul and Lefty Paul. That was the division, I think, on 8chan, and because like the politics board became so right wing that they created another one that's just called Leftist Paul or something. it's like Reddit. What's that? Meth without communism. Where it's like two different subreddits.
Right.
So, but no leftists really to speak of. You just have a couple of accounts that just troll. And most of what I get exposed to is sort of the right wing and the American right wing, and there's this cannibalistic thing that's happening, where you're being exposed to it, and you're just incentivized to kind of attack other people that are on the right, and so that's just kind of been my week since last time, which is being annoyed at a lot of the discourse that's going on. I mean, I get the usual call from the Peter Swedens and the Elon bootlicking and all that stuff, but yeah, I mean, there's been a couple of things that have happened. It's that I wanted to talk about. The first was like the Joe Rogan, Mark Zuckerberg thing, which was interesting because we talked about it last time about what's Keir Starmer going to do? You know, what's Olaf Scholz and Emmanuel Macron going to do about Elon Musk when he comes for them? And I said that they will have to either just go full debate bro, or they will have to just go on podcasts and like bro it out until they've befriended the alt media audience, in a sense. Yeah. And after that, then Mark Zuckerberg went on Joe Rogan, right? And
I really want to see the world where like Keir Starmer and George Shultz tries to be like men of the people, in a sense. They don't seem very right. Macron at least, can do the the wink and a nod, right?
I think he could pull that off.
He could pull it off.
But it would be difficult for those other two, most certainly. But yeah, Zuckerberg went on Joe Rogan, and many people commented that this is like his bro arc, like where he wants to be a part of the MAGA tech bro oligarchy, and that the Joe Rogan podcast had more or less become a kind of like a sort of redemption podcast. If you wanted to be a part of that that circle, you have to just show up there and just sit and talk.
Show
for
up with your
3 hours
apology
and then
form, and yeah, you're back
talk about
in.
how like it's ESG is like totally crazy, bro, and I did psychedelics, and now we're going to remove tampons from the men's bathrooms, and you're on board again, right? We're sort of buddies.
The woke is being put back.
But I mean, people commented on this as well. I didn't, I was starting to compile a list of Joe Rogan episodes, and he has a website. Like if you search the Joe Rogan podcast, you can sort of see. I don't know if you want to do that or bring that up, where you can see the episode list,
The archives.
Yeah, the archives. Because
do we want to do this now, or do we want to do the other articles first? That are
maybe we could do the other articles first. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that. I mean, because I was looking through them, and I was going to spreadsheet it. I just didn't have time this week. But you can see just a very marked change in the type of guests that he brings on and the kind of content that he has. Because he starts in like 2009 or something, and in the beginning, it's just all like, let's see. Is this from in the reverse order? You have to zoom in a little bit because it's a bit blurred.
Yeah, but I don't see maybe I can press date. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, you can press there's dates, and here we okay, you don't know any of these people, so it's comedians mostly. Dane Cook.
Yeah, this is the YouTube guy, isn't it?
No, Joey Diaz is like a UFC fighter.
Oh, it's a UFC guy. Okay, yeah.
So Joe Rogan comes out of that UFC commentary background. He's like a taekwondo fighter, commentator, Fear Factor. He was hosting that show, and he was a stand-up.
So everyone he knows is these like fighter guys, right?
So it's either fighters or it's these comedians that are coming on. But like as you gradually, if you keep flipping to the left, you're moving in the correct direction, you're going to start to see these political commentators. It's like a chronology in the birth of the intellectual dark web, and then like
here in 2014.
Yeah. This is interesting. Molyneux, he had Sargon of Akkad on, I think, and in 2017. But this was very fringe. If you look at the totality of the list here, there are some political figures, but it's mostly like comedians and fighters and like movie stars, and you have this alternative health people like the Wim Hof, the Iceman, and all of these strange characters that are talking about it's like low carb nutrition and
Gavin McInnes, Stephen Crowder, David.
So, okay, now we're seeing.
Did he make like a deal with? No,
it's Milo. Like look at how many people like on the right that is on here now, because like 5 years ago it was just all comedians, and now it's like Crowder, McInnes. Oh yeah, you have the
God sad. He's got the whole lineup here of like 2016.
You're seeing
superstars.
The birth of these Trump oligarchy circle. It's very interesting to see, and it's also, I mean, at least what I'm noticing, just picking out various podcasts, is how much less participatory Joe Rogan is becoming as time passes. I'm either it's because he just doesn't care anymore, or it's because of all of the weed that he smoked, or something. But in the beginning, like if you go back to the early 2010s, he's very participatory, and he's asking questions, and he's talking almost as much as the other guys are talking. But as time passes, he's just more and more kind of just laid back, and he just lets the other guy talk, and he'll ask one or two follow-up questions or kind of whatever. And the guest list that he has on now, it's like, this is like NPR for the right almost. It's just like, okay, you get to bring in all of you talk to Trump and Vance and Elon and like Mark Andreessen and David Sachs and all these sort of people are just coming and sitting and talking about like, I'm being ripped off. They won't let me have my crypto scam empire or whatever. Like, and then this is the woke left are stealing my ability to scam old people. But yeah, anyways, maybe we should take a look at that. Some Norway news, and then we can get back to the.
Okay, we have some extremely sort of. Right. I mean, we'll see how much time we spend on this, because we have two Norway news pieces. One of them is actually more European. But one of them is, I just can't help but indulge in a little bit of like celebrity bullshit every now and again. And it's been a huge thing this week here in Norway, even though I don't know who these people are. But I'm gonna have to do some translation. One moment while I pull this up. So there are. Oh, something's going wrong. Okay, here we go. I'm just gonna get a photo first. So there are two of these celebrities. We'll put that in air quotes because I didn't know who they were, and I looked at Wikipedia and I couldn't really, when you look at someone's Wikipedia, some of these like reality star type celebrities, quote unquote, you can't really pinpoint why they're famous. They're sort of just famous for being around famous people. You see what I'm saying? Like they're famous for being celebrities in celebrity circles,
Celebrity
going on
that,
going on
Kardashian style.
podcasts, right? Yeah. So here's a photo of these two. Like this is, I don't know which is which. They're called Vita and Wanda, and they are children of Iranian immigrants, as far as I know, born in Norway, which we're going to come back to. And they've been out on the town, as influencers do, because I think that's what they are. And they started posting on their stories. When was it? Earlier this week. And what she's saying here is, for some reason also, by the way, you'll notice these photos I've shown, they're incredibly sweaty in all of the photos. I'm not sure if it's just, here it might be because it's late night, they're out eating, maybe the food is hot, the location is hot. But anyway, they're very sweaty in all of their photos. So she's saying, she's posting here that I would love to post a photo of tonight's dinner, but some shithead of a bartender at Grotto, the restaurant, is yelling at us in front of all the guests that our table is not going to take any photos using Blitz. For lighting. By the way, we took photos of your food in all caps, and you're ranting that your customers are taking photos of your food. That's not very good customer service, and I'm not going to give you a good review. Good work delivering shit service. And then her sister puts out pretty much the same, saying that the bartender yelled at them, like literally yelled at them, to put away their flashlight. Worst service, worst treatment ever. This is supposed to be a fancy restaurant. I'm gonna post a storytell video tonight or tomorrow. Blah 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 blah. And this, and then she takes a photo of like the blitz, the flashlight, as the bartender called it. Now, what's funny is that this is one of those like handheld like influencer type things, and if you look at what it actually did, and they actually filmed a photo a couple of nights before of these people at a venue using this flashlight. Look, you're lighting up like half the restaurant with like blue light. It's incredibly invasive. Yeah, it's like, one thing is, oh whoops, I forgot turning off sort of the blitz on my phone camera, but this is like studio quality lighting, blasting other customers. Like, look at this woman. She's like, what's happening?
Wow.
And of course, everyone started laughing at these people, and some people started, going a bit hard, saying things like, they should go back. Very sort of lowbrow right-wing commentary. But these women were like ranting about on social media, ranting for several days about how like badly they were treated and how little respect they got from the staff, and that they were sort of doing things, they were behaving nicely according to them, right? And Nordanon says low brow. I have to make certain concessions at times because of the platform we're on. But I mean, of course, when encountered with the comment to go back, as it were, Vita or Wanda, I don't know which is which, because I don't know them, replied to the commenter saying that they were born in Norway, they consider themselves Norwegian, and I can't help but think that if you consider yourself Norwegian and you believe that you've been raised in a Norwegian way, you should have known better. So as far as I believe, you're not, right? If you don't understand this, then, you know, it's all the same, right?
When you first showed me the pictures, because I hadn't been exposed to the story prior to this, at least just by, what do you say, by osmosis, I've just seen pictures and heard little tidbits. I wasn't even sure if they were ethnically Norwegian or not. You know, you have some of these women who put so much makeup on and they put this nasty brown stuff, this kind of spray tan and all this stuff. I wasn't sure what I was even looking at. I mean, they probably made effort, put in some effort too. If they're from that region, you know, they looked like they had a lot of plastic surgery. I mean, can you bring the photos up again? Because I found their faces to be fascinating.
I will bring some photos.
I assume that flashlight that they had probably doesn't help. I mean, usually, if you've noticed, if you go into a bathroom where they have like a very strong lighting from the top, and you can just see like every impurity in your skin and every wrinkle just shows up.
I mean, this here is a better photo of them done by a professional sort of newspaper photograph, right? One moment. You can just keep talking. I just need to reconnect my headphones.
Yep. So here are these two. I mean, because they look like they have so much mush in their face. I was just not sure what ethnicity they were. And it's quite typical for Iranians to get nose jobs. That was the first thing I thought when I saw their faces, especially the one on the left here. You see how her nose is like really Anglo-Saxonish. It's slim with the bridge and kind of small when it's closing in. It looks like a typical nose job because Iranians typically have like these honker air stealer noses. A little bit more like the one on the right looks more natural, slightly more natural, but the one on the left, I'm pretty sure this is a nose job, likely like Botox filler in the face as well, and they put this kind of nasty green stuff on. So you can't. It's yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry, Thomas.
You know what? I'm actually I like the initiative. Actually, wood is good because we're getting to low initiative people later. So yeah, you still would take it, and they put the effort in. So yeah, I've just been speculating about the plastic surgery of the woman on the left there.
Sure.
Yeah, I assume, you know, it's the woman on the left is also the one that's in the center. And this looks like a nose job to me.
It really does, especially from the angle where she's taking the selfie, right?
Yep. And yeah, with that sort of
so I mean, this isn't very much newsworthy. It's just funny, you know. They did it. Everyone hated them. They got lambasted by basically everyone.
Yeah, I just don't know.
And now they have to apologize. So
if they are the type who, if this is just going to make them appear more often and we're just feeding into it, or are we actually doing something to deter them from this bad behavior?
Because I literally didn't know who these people were a week ago. So I hope
but
not.
now everybody have seen them.
Yeah.
So is this a part of the strategy, or are we actually doing something to deter further Iranian assaults on fine dining in Oslo?
It's got to put up signs saying no Iranians and no photographing. Yeah. Just guarding your restaurant completely. Let's see here.
We must maintain civilization. We must keep the standards high.
Yeah. We'll rapid fire this one as well. Young women are more concerned than older women when it comes to traditional gender roles, or care more about traditional gender roles. Researcher has reviewed surprised at how young Norwegian women respond in a European survey on gender equality. I was offended, she says, Marie Midtun. She has just heard of a new study showing that young Norwegian men and women, 18 to 25, more than older people, have a conservative view of gender roles and gender equality. Among other things, by the fact that young people to a greater extent believe that, quote, women should be protected by men, that women become quote, too easily offended, and that women, quote, seek to achieve power through manipulation of men. Now, based, first of all, this might be mistranslated, but I don't think it is, because I've read this one in Norwegian as well. I mean, this is pretty soft, right? I think a lot of people would, I mean, we're still sort of women and children first, right?
Yeah, I don't think that's changed.
When the Titanic goes down, right? Too easily offended. I mean, that's been a meme, I guess, as long as there's been sitcoms around. So that's pretty standard. This one is a bit more spicy, and I guess that's where they're taking offense. Quote, I think there are biological differences at the bottom of all this, but these are very reinforced by society, she says. Who is this person? It doesn't say who this is. I think this is just random people.
In the photo?
They've not experienced...
the authors?
No, I don't think so. Are this just some random people they've interviewed on the street? Huh. They have not experienced an altered attitude towards gender equality in their own circle, but they still notice a change in the public conversation. I think in general we have become more open to all gender expressions. It may be accepted that you feel at home in the traditional gender roles, but it's also okay that you do not feel at home in them, says Medell Borgen. In middle school, I thought that if one was a real feminist, one should not wear tight feminine clothes, while now I have embraced my feminine sides while also aiming to have a career, she says. And neither of them were tight feminine clothes, though. So, I mean, facts and logic destroyed. I don't know. We put it. If I had a soundboard, I would use like air horns. Let's see here. The figures stem from European social survey studies of attitudes towards gender equality, and sexism in 24 European countries. Researcher Jane Bolscher has then studied how young men and women from 18 to 25 respond compared to older men and women in Norway. Quote, conservative gender stereotypes are strong among young people in Norway. I am surprised that the figures show that this also applies to young women. She believes that this is because today's young people are grown up in a very equal society. They're socialized to ensure that men and women are treated very equally. It characterizes how people perceive gender differences. What remains are biological differences, and they do not perceive that as a problem. But the picture isn't clear. The support for gender equality at work, parental leave, and the like is high among... they do not believe that, quote, women should be at home and raise children, unquote. But some feel threatened by the traditional equality and by demands that men and women have to work and live exactly the same. Now, young people say that there are some biological differences, and that is okay, the professor says. So you're saying that towing Sylvie Listhaug's line is more popular than Gro Harlem Brundtland's, which is current and previous politicians. Yes, based on the numbers, we can speculate about this. Gro spearheaded a more traditional political equality, but today's young people, both men and women, support more of a kind of conservative gender equality that wants equal rights for men and women, and at the same time emphasizes biological differences between the sexes. But what does that mean, though? Like, what is that? What is gender equality, but... I mean, either it's equality or it isn't.
The new model is being born, right? I mean, this stuff was always open for interpretations when it comes to gender equality, and exactly when you say stuff like women are more easily offended, or who should protect who and stuff. It always has a different context, and it has to fit with the new generation and what they need. Hopefully, this version is more pragmatic than the previous one, because I mean, the contradiction must be resolved. Isn't that what they say when they talk about the dialectic? That's gone out of fashion to talk about, right? Hegelian dialectics. There was a point where like that every conversation had that word inserted.
Synthesis hasn't been achieved yet. Yeah.
We must synthesize. We must find a new.
Okay.
New
so these two women are students who study organization management and workplace at the University of Oslo. Okay, so that's why they're being interviewed. Another finding in the study is that Norwegian men feel more masculine than Norwegian women feel feminine compared to men and women in other countries. Now that's interesting. The two students were not very surprised by this. Quote, it may be related to the fact that it has not...
feel more masculine? What does that mean?
It's probably extrapolated from a bunch of different questions, right?
Is it a weird translation? Is it that's literally what they mean? Like they
Let me double check. Let's see here. Yep. Men, to a greater degree, feel more masculine than Norwegian women feel feminine,
okay.
compared to women and men in other countries.
So Norwegian women are butch, essentially. That's kind of... I've
they feel more butch.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. I don't think they put in that much effort in terms of being hyper feminine in the same way that you get in Southern Europe and
Probably
maybe
not.
in some of the Eastern European countries. So I think many people will have that impression, especially when they deal with women from Norway.
It may be related to the fact that it has not previously been so accepted in Norwegian culture to decorate and highlight feminine traits. What are you talking about? Hang on, I need to double check the translation here. Oh, to like doll up, or to sort of like highlight your feminine traits. But still, what are you talking? If you look at it sort of like anything from like before the 1970s, that's what it was, right?
Now, I don't think you had this hyper specialized femininity in Scandinavian culture, actually.
Oh, not hyper specialized, of course not.
I mean, like the way they play up femininity, like they would do in sort of Latin American countries, or
no, of course not. Sure, okay,
Eastern European women or something like that.
Okay.
You have like certain periods of Chinese women who do like tiny hands, tiny feet, and the powder and all that kind of stuff. I don't think we have any history of that, and
yeah, okay, then I'm just sort of misunderstanding what she's saying. But yes, when you're putting it like that, I agree. She apparently looks to Amelia Enger. That's an example of this. Okay, yeah, girl boss in chief, our Minister of Justice, who was she ordered to delete TikTok or something because she was like tweeting girl boss videos of her working at Parliament or something?
This is something about it. I need to Google that.
Let's see here. She's a clear new role model in that she has a job that most men have had, but at the same time goes in wears skirts and embraces her feminine side. The Ombudsman for Gender Equality, Bjorn Erik-Thun, says that the findings suggest that masculinity is important for men. Wow, shocker. This may be related to the fact that we have received more young male voices in the gender equality debate. Is it? There's also attention to the, quote, guys, including people through the male committee report and the Prime Minister's new speech. Thun find it interesting to see that the discussion also revolved around boys' challenges related to, for example, schooling and mental health. I hope that identifying as masculine not only means tough and strong, but also, quote, vulnerable and willing to receive help when needed, says Thun. That's always interesting. It feels like a dichotomy that is it's going to be very hard to sort of, well, we use the word synthesis, to synthesize these two things, right?
I think this is a godsend, actually, because I wasn't sure how we were going to segue into the other content, but then this article ends with like men's issues, and I thought, perfect. Now we can talk about male role models.
Take it away, Ludwig.
Work and all that stuff.
Are we going to talk about video games first, or are we going to talk about...
maybe we'll just drop the Elon video games. I mean, it is complicit with all the other stuff, but I sometimes follow some like these lefty troll accounts on Twitter, and you have Eivind Trærdal, who's like he's one of the main guys in the Green Party. Like, he likes to troll on Twitter, and he was on one of these Norwegian podcasts now on E-Nyheter, talking to Ola Asbjørn Næss, and he made a comment about this, and I think that he is a type who just kind of lives off antagonizing chuds. Essentially, that's kind of his brand, but I think he has a lot of sound criticisms of the right. And one of the things he commented is that he was talking about the feminist philosopher Simone de Beauvoir, right? That's the wife of Sartre, I think, who was talking about like she has a book that's called The Other Gender or something like that, and the thesis is basically that the male is default and female is the other. Like that's like the sort of thing that you have to specialize for. You have to be female because a man is just kind of the default setting. But now men have become gendered in a sense. That was his thesis. Is that this is what
are you saying that
of,
in like medical sciences? Is that what you're saying?
No, well, yeah, maybe medical sciences as well. It's a sort of more broad social phenomenon.
Oh, okay, sure.
But really, just across, whether it's for medicine or if it's for social sciences, culture, etiquette, like the male is the default and the female is the other. But now it's like both genders is something that you have to become in a sense, and you have to sort of become male now. It's not just a default thing. So that's kind of his thesis as to the emphasis on masculinity and figuring out how to be masculine, how to feel masculine, and that
you have
is
to basically sort of redo the work. Nice.
No, you have to figure out what it is. It's not just thrust upon you in a sense. You don't just slip into it. You have to figure out what it is and define it.
Okay, because is that because the definition of what it is, not necessarily language wise, but just the definition of what it means to be masculine has shifted? Is that it?
No, I don't. Well, I think the definition was never really that clear in the first place. I think it just sort of fell into a natural hierarchy in a sense, just based on needs.
Sure.
For the type of lifestyles and civilizations that you had at the time. But now you're in a sort of more spot where that's kind of not the case anymore.
Okay, so you're saying because the type that is natural for men isn't as needed anymore. That's why
there has to be a kind of you have to make it explicit now. You have to explain it. You can't just embody it. You have to sit down and talk about what a man is and how to become a man or something. It's not just a part of, okay, you're born and then you work and you do sports and you do hard manual labor and you go in the army, and it's like this process where you're naturally socialized to be a man by default. Now that's not the life cycle anymore, so you have to sort of become it and find out what it is. And that's where people like Andrew Tate come in. Like that's where this niche of the masculine influencer, I don't know what, the manosphere and all of these like this entire ecosystem. So I sent you a link to a tweet in the private chat that we could look at because I found it I found it interesting, and it has to do with like the American churches who struggle with this stuff.
So this is from Whitebeard, Apologia Church Director, Apologist, Author, Professor of Apologetics and Church History, Grandfather to Tate as well. Okay, some guy.
Credentialed and Christian.
Yeah. I confess, this entire issue leaves me astonished. Sure, it is part of judgment, yes. Our hands are covered with blood, so yes, the Lord is just to turn us upon ourselves. I get all of that. Quote, we need examples of masculinity, is all I hear. Look, the family, as God designed it, provides that, a father and a mother. A father who provides, who works, who is disciplined, who shows love and respect for the mother. A mother who likewise works, but nurtures, comforts, respects, and submits to her husband. When you have that example played out before you each and every day, you do not need to be desperately looking elsewhere for your role models. I learned through childhood that the day would come when I would need to take care of myself, provide for myself, and I believed that it would happen at age 18. And so I learned from my parents to work hard. I started working as a sophomore in high school, which is why I had little money to buy a super cool suit to try to impress that gorgeous girl who I saw at the church for the first time I visited, who then turned out to be my future sister-in-law, my wife. Future sister-in-law. My wife is an identical twin. He had me in the first half there. And yet I maintained my grades and graduated valedictorian and got a full ride scholarship to college. I didn't go out and party and get in trouble. Having to work sort of helps with that. And I learned to respect women and to treat them properly. Andrew Tate embodies the absolute negation of true biblical manhood. Self-centered, vain, arrogant, prideful, undisciplined, ignorant, violent, disrespectful to God and mankind, abusive to women and proud of it, he is the very epitome of ungodly, unchristlike rebellion. The things I have heard coming out of his mouth are astonishing and worthy only of the vilest of mankind. And yet, here we have Christian young men in a classical Christian school finding him to be an attractive role model. This is the result of the nominalism that was recently described as, quote, therapeutic deism, a mixture of coddled Western rich kids who have never had to go without, never had to wear hand-me-downs, always gotten whatever they wanted, together with the influx of secular thought that leaves no place for the wrath or judgment of God. It is the result of discipleless Christianity. No call to self-denial. Instead, the, quote, Jesus will make you healthy, wealthy, and uber-happy every day message that produces false converts. It is not a matter of, quote, offering a model. It is a matter of directly teaching them that a life lived like Andrew Tate is a life ruined, a body defiled, a soul destroyed, a future eviscerated, and an eternity of just agony as punishment. If some enraged husband or even rape victim does not blow his brains out first, he will die a lonely, degraded, sad little man, even if God grants him a long life so as to store up for himself an epic mountain of wrath. Unless he turns from this life, renounces it, sells all he owns to make reparations to all he has harmed, and turns to Christ in helpless abandon, seeking forgiveness, he will be remembered as an example, like Nero, an example of the worst of mankind.
Yeah, he has turned to Christ recently, by the way. I don't know how many
Tate?
people follow
I
that.
thought he was Muslim.
Yeah, Andrew. Yeah, well, not anymore because he started the
What?
Bruv party, right? He wants to run for office in the UK because he still has United States citizenship and to clean up the Labour Party mess. So he has started the Bruv party, which promises to kick Muslims out of the UK. So and really put Christianity first, and so I guess he has found Christianity, but I mean that's kind of the problem here, and this is just a bit of a tangent, but like with these belief systems and you know I'm a Muslim, I'm a Christian, whatever, you're seeing how bad actors very easily can sort of hack into these emotions and these sentiments and what people want politically in order to just get stuff from you. So it's not enough to just make these declarations. You have to be able to look at like a larger picture of what you want in a role model or what you want from other people, or sort of be able to explain. I think be able to explain better to people, okay, what's wrong with Andrew Tate, because I feel like that's a failure here. And you see a lot of the dissident right commentary at like Oral McIntyre or Dave the Distributist who are commenting on this, and the commentary is like, well, haha, like well, you shouldn't have made churches so feminized, and you shouldn't have been so gay, and done this stuff because the young men think that you're losers because you're low status, and Tate is high status, and that's why they like him instead. But the problem is that none of these people, neither like Oron or Distributist or like anybody in this dissident sphere, is really offering any kind of alternative male role model to what's being offered by Andrew Tate. And none of them are, I think, in my view, are effectively condemning him as an influencer, really. I think, I don't know if you have a different opinion on this, but like my view, a reason that, you know, Andrew Tate has high status is because he has been boosted and promoted by a lot of these alt media types, whether it's Tucker Carlson, you know, Patrick Bet-David, Fresh and Fit podcast, Benny Johnson, you know, like you know, Ryan Dawson, Anastasia. There's like so many people who have brought this guy on and basically run apologetics for him, right? It's like, let's say like Tucker, right? People who watch Tucker or who watch these shows, they don't trust mainstream media. They don't read primary sources because they don't trust institutions or whatever. So you ask them to like read court documents from Romania, they'll say, well, that's the deep state or something. That's the regime. So they don't trust that. So they trust Tucker Carlson to tell them the truth. And then Andrew Tate goes on Tucker Carlson and he asks, well, you know, are you a human trafficker, Tate? Nope. Okay, well, that settles that. but that's been the approach. That's been Patrick Bet-David and all of these big influencers who are close to Trump, because like this is a thing, you know, in the kind of dream world that Oral McIntyre lives in, where he thinks that, you know, right-wing beliefs are going to become high status. This is one of the things that I tweeted about as well. That, you know, okay, well, left, they've talked about the cathedral and how like the left uses these beliefs like the trans stuff, the global warming, and all that stuff to kind of status signal in a sense that they are virtuous, and they can find each other by these beliefs. And like in their kind of imaginary fantasy world, then like the right is going to have a similar thing where they can have their high status right-wing beliefs. But the right doesn't work like that. It's sort of loose coalitions of discontents who have believed in every single thing under the sun, that are united by sort of common resentment against a establishment elite through a personality cult, where Trump is kind of at the top, and status comes from Trump.
And even that, we've talked about that before, MAGA and the way it's playing out now. Is Trump even sort of the center point of MAGA anymore, right?
Well, yeah, I still think he is, at least from the signals that I'm getting with the direction, because Elon is trying to stretch the rubber band a little bit to see how far he can go.
It was pulled back in. That's true.
With pushing, and I feel like he was sort of not necessarily pulled back in by Trump, but by the crowds, essentially. Like the feed, he does not have, Elon doesn't have the escape velocity of Trump. I talked about this sort of populist escape velocity, where it's like Trump is reached orbit. Like he doesn't feel gravity anymore.
There's no gravity anymore. He can just go wherever he wants. Yeah,
he can just do whatever he wants, say whatever he likes, and people are sort of they're in on the joke when it's Trump. They're sort of part of it. But with Elon, it's kind of,
committed to the bit more than anyone has committed to the bit ever before.
They're it's like you're watching a movie, right? There's a contract with the audience, and like you can sort of say that these are actors, and that it's special effects, but you choose to believe it, and that Trump has disbelief, that. Right? But with Elon, he doesn't have the same thing. He has it to a certain extent. He has built up a lot of credibility, but I'm seeing that being torn down now with the with the revelations with the gaming stuff that we talked about.
Yeah, especially. Do we want to do this? I guess it's relevant now that we're talking about it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you want.
We can come back to Tate. Yeah, I do. So maybe we should touch on the Elon stuff, and then we'll circle back to Tate.
Sure.
Because specifically with Elon here, and his suspension of disbelief, he's been sort of having a hard time because he was streaming video games on Twitter, and it turns out he sucks at them. Right? Now he's for a long time been tweeting about how he is good at. You sent me a video. I don't have it, but I have like a Reddit document, basically. So he's been bragging about how he's like the top Diablo player in the world or something, right? And we've talked about this here as well. And some people accused him of sort of buying gear or something, right? And recently, Path of Exile 2 came out, similar game to Diablo, so it makes sense that Elon would want to play that as well. Problem is that he sucks at that game, and it's a game that's a lot harder than Diablo. So it's a lot easier if you know what you're doing to spot someone who doesn't know what they're doing, right? So Elon was streaming, and he's, piloting his character like a retard, and a bunch of other things. So I'm going to read from the list here some suspicious moments. Can I hide this? No, okay. This is kind of a sucky layout, isn't it? Like the content is being minimized while the ads and the what is going on? This is a retarded layout. Okay.
Yeah, you have to take a picture and zoom in or something. But,
maybe
we'll trust your reading.
Okay, here we go. Suspicious instances from Elon's stream. He does not seem to know how to use a mana flask, which is a very basic thing. He does not seem to understand that you can only run connected Atlas nodes, which is literally basic UI interaction. He's dragging items manually into his inventory. He struggles to understand why he cannot pick up an item if his inventory is full. And bear in mind, his character is at a level at this point where most people would have invested, like... I mean, if he's a casual gamer, let's say Elon isn't. He's like the top Diablo player in the world. He's really good. He's been no-lifing this game since it came out. He's probably been spending like 200 hours playing this game or something, right? And getting to 200 hours without understanding how your inventory works is, he commentates on some items. He's just saying stuff, and people are like, what are you talking about? he complains that his gear is low level, when actually his gear is, you know, what he's talking about is sort of the required level for the gear, and not necessarily the actual sort of quality level of the gear. Let's see here. The account, on his account, in his sort of like storage space, there's a tab called Elon's Maps, which is a very strange thing to call your storage of maps. If I were going to play the game, I would name a tab Walrus's Maps. It would just be maps, right? Because it's all mine. uh, so obviously then the conclusion is, and to top it off, there's some people saying that if you go on the trade website and you try to trade with them, the software automates your request to Chinese because it detects that the account is Chinese and not American. So all of this, you know, there's more here as well, leads people to actually Elon has botted his account. He's got, you know, what's the Chinese guy? Yilong Ma to play Path of Exile for him, and then he can come in when he's like level 85 or something and have some fun blasting some maps. And in theory, this is all fine, right? I mean, if that's how he wants to play the game, I'm sure it's probably against TOS or something, but I don't think the studio who makes the game would strike down Elon for that. But the thing is that when he's accused of this, instead of saying, you know what, you know, I run 4 companies or something, I don't have time to grind this game, so yeah, I pay some, you know, H1B guy here at Twitter to play the game for me. He sort of doubles down and tries to create this narrative that he's actually a god gamer, and starts banning people and refuses to stream on his main. Suddenly Adrian Dittman is streaming a lot of Path of Exile 2, right? Everyone in the chat is talking as if it's Elon streaming. It's very strange times. And this is the weird thing about him, is that if he just said, yeah, I don't give a shit, I'm like the richest man in the world, if I want to play a game, I get some slave to play it for me until it's fun, right? I don't think anyone would give a shit. But as I saw someone saying, like a comment section somewhere, which is where he's sort of starting to run afoul of, someone said that he had betrayed the gamers. He's running afoul of the voter base, as it were, of MAGA, as with the H1B, is that I think the comment went something along the lines of, I remember Elon talking about how good he is at running companies, and I don't really know anything about running companies, so I figured that he must be right. And then he said he knows a lot about building rockets, and I don't really know anything about how to build rockets, so I figured he must be right. And then he tells me he's really good at video games, but I know a lot about video games, and this guy seems kind of retarded. So now I don't know what to think. So I think that's sort of where we're at with that. And I forgot what started us on this. Yes, the escape velocity. So he's being pulled back on that, but Trump is immune, and
Trump could do this, right? And he would get
Trump
away
could
with
do
it.
this.
Nobody would
and,
care. Like,
and Trump could as well be like, yeah, I just paid, you know, I got what's the name of his son? I got one of his friends. Yeah, I got one of Barron's friends to set this up for me or something. Right? He could play it off. It's easy, right?
Yeah, he would just play it off, or just say something that would make it funny, and then you would forget about it. But he is also the type of guy to do this. But it's like with Elon, it's when we talked about this, I think maybe the last stream or the stream before that with Diablo 4. Like, how is it possible if it takes like a 40-50 hour work week to level your character this highly? And he's sitting on Twitter, like we you know, if you've seen his Twitter activity log, he's tweeting all day. So he's tweeting all day, and playing video games all day, and running multiple companies, and having 12 kids.
Sure, he's just tweeting like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, that could probably be automated as well. I do suspect that some of his tweets are maybe like some other guy, because it's just so much like
has to be like a PR guy.
You know, some guy who's just like, wow, interesting, concerning. And again, it's totally normal. I mean, people have these have people do that.
I mean, Trump shows frequently shows sort of his like PR war rooms, right, that they set up for tweeting. So it's not like this is some well-kept secret that Elon has to keep up, right? It's just that he, for some reason, has...
well, the thing is that he when I asked about this last time, and like, okay, people are coming out and saying that this doesn't make any sense, but then you brought up that like John Carmack came out and said, well, I know Elon and he's very serious about games. So think about that for a second. Like, people who are high up in the system, who know a lot of stuff, who are experts, feel pressure.
John Carmack
lie.
is really good at what he does. Yeah.
They feel pressure to lie on behalf of Elon, right? They know it doesn't make sense, but they because he has gone after people who are trying to expose him for this. Like, he deactivated the check mark on, like, what is his name, Osman Gold or something, this streamer who was doing streams about this.
But I don't know why. There's you sent me a link, but I'm not sure why he got deactivated. Did he take a shot at Elon or something?
Yeah, he did. He made a stream, sort of about the stuff that we're talking about right now. And he's like a very big video game.
Oh yeah,
streamer.
You sent me a link. Hang on. I know Sam Hyde talked about him in the video he did. How petty is Elon? After streamer at Asmongold criticized his mad gaming skills, Elon unfollowed him, temporarily removed his verification, and leaked some of their DMs. This is Elon talking to Zach. Okay, sure. Who are these mysterious editors? Oh, okay. Whatever. He's saying he behaves like a maverick independent, but this is just drama. I don't really care about this.
Yeah, the thing is that he is actively going out to punish people if they don't go along with his bullshit, right? And you're seeing that, like, if John Carmack is that big and he has to play along with Elon's bullshit, and Joe Rogan has to play along with it as well, because like, this is, okay, where is this being spread out? Elon is on Joe Rogan podcast and saying that he was a top player in Quake. He was a top player in Diablo, and but Joe Rogan himself is a top Quake player. He used to be, I don't know if they had like a professional scene or whatever, but he was very, very hardcore into that game, and he would know a lot about that game and would be able to sort of ask questions about that, or if he wanted to prod, then he could. But he feels like he can't. And everybody around Elon basically feel like they have to pad this kind of structure of lies around him, like that are really like people who are large up in the system. So there's very little accountability in this system in terms of trying to call out people for doing anything wrong or having any dialectic with like internal criticism or something. Like, if Elon says that he's like the world's best gamer, then you have to just agree. And if you don't, then he's going to crack the whip on you. And like I talked about this at the last stream with this kind of ass kisser culture. It's still there, and that's kind of the stuff that he's created on Twitter, is like this sort of ass kisser culture. And I assume that that's what he's used to. That's what he's created around himself. And Trump is also surrounded with ass kissers, but it seems like Elon is just a little bit more sensitive, and he doesn't have that same flair.
Yeah, I don't know. Trump seems to be able to navigate that stuff a lot better. He probably has a lot more experience. I don't know what it is, right?
He doesn't. Trump doesn't care. It's kind of his thing most of the time. It's
I guess he just accepts it as a fact that everyone around him, because he's talked about that when he's gone on podcasts and stuff before the election. He's like, yeah, everyone wants in, right? Everyone wants a piece of the pie, and that's just reality, especially once you become president, right? He said it, of course, in his words, but that's essentially what he said. And if you just learn to live like that, I guess, everyone around, if you just assume that, it's fine.
Yep. But yeah, it's
a strange way to live, but it's reality, right?
Yeah. But we're circling back to people like Andrew Tate, because that's also a similar situation where it's like he has a structure of people around him that are lying on behalf of him, like Tucker Carlson or Patrick Bet-David, or a lot of these people who will sit and talk about his case and pretend that there's no case against him, and that he's much richer, he's like a billionaire, which he isn't, or that he, like, the championship belt that he had was it was like the top kickboxing federation. It wasn't, or that his dad worked for the CIA, but he was actually some cleaning guy or something. Like this is essentially what like this top the new kind of American right is. It's like this very fragile web of these like lying grifter types. And I get that. I get the criticism that's coming from these dissident right people about, well, look at these feminine churches, look at all these boomers and all these losers or whatever. But what exactly are they providing here that's any more constructive or any better than essentially boomer advice that's coming from like this the priest, where we had the tweet, because the alternative that's being presented is like, well, okay, masculinity. Well, what does that mean? It's just like lying and cheating as much as you can to get to the top, and having zero accountability.
You're like faced with like three pathways. It's like lying and cheating to get to the top, turn to Christ, or this nebulous like get in touch with your feelings stuff. That's sort of the mainstream thing, right?
Well, I mean, it's a lot of liars and cheaters that are getting in touch with Christ currently. It seems to be the kind of main grift to get in with people's good graces. But it's I mean, okay, there's like the various defenses for this. Typically, they would say something like, "Well, it's like the what I call like the Russian defense." That's the typical the Russification of the American mind stuff. This is the stuff you get from that's the Aaron McIntyre line, right? It's all bad. It's all oligarchy. It's all bad. It's all this. So I don't have to take accountability for anything. Like because the left did something 20 years ago, then I can spread as much disinfo as I like or something. But it's just not very constructive. It just means that you can't really have discussions about anything. It's just really it's like this Machiavellian contest of who can put as much bullshit as possible into the media space, and at the end of it you win. Which, I mean, of course, I get it. I just don't think there's nothing good at the other end of this stuff. And I think to sort of illustrate this, and now we're getting to the point where I was talking about like pissing off the American audience, because we're going to go in on the sort of economics jobs issue here. I have a tweet.
So we're going to talk about Panda Express. Yeah, I'm not hugely caught up on this, but
most people don't understand what it is. But just I have Chris Rufo's original tweet, and we could try to maybe talk about the reactions. And
all right, I'm gonna have to sort of probably ask some stupid questions here as we go. Rufo says, what is this about? People keep telling me the economy is strong, but every time I look at the news, I see layoffs and businesses closing. Personally, I'm doing just fine, but I can see with my own eyes that something is fucked. Not sure what to believe here. Christopher Rufo says, this is basically, quote, full employment. The Panda Express near my house is offering $70K a year plus benefits for the assistant manager role. You can make $100K a year working at Chipotle for a few years and working up to store manager. And what is this? General unemployment rate in the United States is currently 4.2%, increasing from 4.1% in October 2024. College graduates, the situation varies by age group and experience level. College graduates ages 22 to 27 face a higher unemployment rate of 5.3%, which is the highest level in about 3 years. The unemployment gap between recent graduates and overall workers has been widening since the summer of 2022. And then BAP, of all people, chimes in to say, this is an absurd thing to post. This environment is the worst in decades and maybe ever in America. But to build wealth through any normal career, it is the worst work environment and post prospects for wealth accumulation. I'm not going to do this. For a young person, it is next to impossible, in fact, even with the best degrees and, quote, elite job. It is absurd and a joke to see conservative pundits who work as writers and commentators in media and aren't frankly exemplars of Protestant capitalist enterprise recommend working at Chipotle and UPS for a few smart young right-wing men who are deploring decades-long trends. Maybe you'll care to also give them advice on manning up and marrying a local sweet girl high school sweetheart. So this is like the basic. We're back to the Nietzscheans versus the Christians again. This keeps going in circles, I feel.
Okay, I have another tweet in the private chat here that I just want to highlight before we go any further with my commentary.
He says as well, you can't really believe that young Americans have worse prospect for wealth accumulation ever. Gen Z is accumulating wealth faster than any previous generation. Okay, yes, sorry. You sent me something else.
Yeah, there's another link. There's another link now in the private chat. It's the one at the bottom. But just wait a little bit because there's here. Yeah, there. Just look at this. Look at this graphic. So it says
perception on how well the U.S. economy is dependent on partisanship rather than any objective measurement of economic activity. It just flips. I love it.
Yeah, and when you hear Americans talk about the economy, they're not talking about the economy. You have to understand this. This is sorry, I'm almost getting a little bit agitated, but like the American.
No, but I can see what you're
discussion.
like, because
And-
it's a big and complex thing, and it's very easy to talk about your specific state, essentially, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is like the economy isn't a problem in the United States. I'm just going to say this because it's just a partisan political meme thing that they're bringing up. I'll give you another tweet just to kind of illustrate my point.
Sorry, this is literally like a "it's over, we're back" graph.
Yeah. I mean, again, they talk about inflation, they talk about unemployment, they talk about all this stuff, but it has nothing to do with the actual numbers. It has all to do with like whether like my guy is in office or not.
What radicalized you? DoorDash, double cheeseburger. What is it? Because it's expensive? I don't know what a burger costs.
It's because it's expensive here. And okay, let me give you some perspective here. So these Americans are now, they're complaining about. They're complaining about essentially it's they don't want to take a job at Panda Express as a manager job for 6 figures, right? 6 figures. That's like $1 million Norwegian kroner salary.
That's insane. I mean, I don't know what the cost of living is, but that's insane, right?
Well, okay, if this is like he's complaining, I'm being radicalized. This is like Tucker Carlson in Russia. This should radicalize you. This should absolutely radicalize. Again, has nothing to do with price, has nothing to do with perspective, has nothing to do with actually looking at metrics and how well you're doing. It's just like this fucking thing. You could hold up anything. You just pick up an apple from a rock or something and say this should radicalize you because it's okay. DoorDash.
Well, hang on. I mean, I know what you're saying, Ludwig, but before you go on, I mean, there is. I mean, at some point, I mean, you said it yourself with the graphs. At some point, this is all vibes based anyway, right?
Yeah, but my point is like just to finish the point. If I go to McDonald's, if I drive to my local McDonald's, this is the prices that I pay for these items, and he is getting these prices in a taxi to his door.
Yeah, he's getting a private chauffeur for his burger. Yeah,
while also being able to work at DoorDash for 6 figures, right? I'm a software developer.
And he probably keeps more of the money as well because he's not taxed as hard as we are.
He's taxed lower than us, and I'm a senior software developer with 10 years experience. I don't make 6 figures. Chipotle, manager in the US makes 6 figures, okay, and they're paying less for this kind of stuff. Like I was considering at one point moving to Texas before COVID because I could get.
I thought about that too, but I have some friends who are sort of like friends, I guess, former coworkers, etc., who ended up in San Francisco and what's the place in Texas? I forget. The Houston,
Austin or
I guess.
Or Houston,
Austin, yeah. And I mean the money you make there is insane, but so is the cost of living, right? So you basically you go in, you live cheaply, you work for like 4 or 5 years, and then you make an insane amount of money, and then you run, right? That's the plan.
Yes, and that's why I sort of considered it as well, because I could have been making like 30K as a software with my experience level at working at Morgan Stanley, right? And getting taxed at like 25% instead of like 44 or something, which I'm currently being taxed at. Like, and these are the
you're
people
talking about a
who are
manager here, though.
Yeah,
I see someone in chat.
Sort of. Like it's just generally with the salary levels, with like, because I'm spending more time now speculating in currency, looking at stocks, and that means that I look at numbers from like the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the GDP numbers, all this kind of stuff, and like America is doing reasonably well compared to the rest of the world on almost every metric. And so when they're sitting there talking about like economic anxiety and I'm being radicalized by the price of it. This is just total bullshit. It's like these incels are talking about how every woman has had 100 partners and are being rammed through by BBC all the time, and like I can't find a proper wife or whatever. Like I can never take this seriously again after having watched this stuff. This is not a serious discussion.
So when they're saying that, let's say this burger like 5 years ago cost like $1 instead of $6, are you just saying that well, but wages have
Well, it's
inflated
worse.
along
It's
with it.
worse for like everyone else than them.
No, I know it's worse for
Every other
everyone else,
country
but that's
paying
why I'm
more money,
saying
right?
at the end of the day, this is vibes based. It's not about what it is; it's about what it feels like to have
Well,
something taken from you, right?
Well, essentially, but they have had less taken from them than anybody else. That's the point. Like nobody in
Yeah.
Europe is talking about radicalization, for example, in the UK. It's about the stuff like grooming gangs or immigration or the stuff like this. Nobody's being radicalized in the UK because of inflation, and they make shit. Like they have one of the worst economies, but this is not a talking
Yeah, I mean,
point.
the
Like
UK
they're saying,
is
I'm
fucked. So
radicalized. Yeah, I'm radicalized by inflation, and they're just they're making pennies on the dollar for what the Americans are making. I'm exaggerating a bit, but like their economy is terrible, and so it is in many other European countries. They have almost negative or no growth at all. And
sure,
nobody's
but
sitting
I
and
mean,
talking about how
if you're the
they're
heart of the empire, you should be able to do whatever you want in that sense, right?
yeah, but
I mean,
this becomes
America
like
shouldn't be suffering this much compared to all of its vassals if we're all gonna suffer, right? Like, I'm not saying
they
that's how it should be. I'm just thinking, like, thought experiment, right?
well, this is becomes almost like the Yuval Noah Harari point. I have to go back to the streams and make apology forms to. I made an apology form to Dave Ramsey. I have to make an
You're
apology
not going to
form
make
Sam
an
Harris.
apology form to Yuval Noah Harari.
Yeah,
I mean, his
I'm
graphs
probably
are
gonna have
ass.
to make one because make a form to him as well, because he made a similar point that it's like they're the fate of the world is being decided by essentially it's got a malcontent Americans who are making more money than everybody else. I mean, this is just bizarre, and the problem is that I get that it's like it's not cool to work at a food like a fast food joint or something like that, but like what it's like being a manager at a fast food restaurant or being a manager at the Asian food restaurant and making six figures. Is that not like it's not good enough?
No, I mean,
adult?
that's great. But
Like,
I mean, I mean, this is America we're talking about. How many fast food managers to fast food sort of grunt workers? And how much money are the grunt workers actually making? Because
well,
there's
yeah,
going to be like
I don't
20
know,
times
but,
more grunt workers than there are going to be managers, right?
yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't have the full stats, but you get this sort of contradictory stuff from the sort of like the old media commentariat, where on one side they're complaining about like they're complaining about how these jobs are like beneath us or whatever, and on the other side they're complaining about HB1 visa applications because Panda Express had those, right? They were trying to get in workers.
Sure.
I'll see if I can get the Pacific tweet here. Maybe I didn't. It's hard because I have to make so many
you're touching on
bookmarks there.
something which I've quite enjoyed is listening to Mike Rowe of all people, because he really likes talking about America sort of facing a not a labor shortage, but like a labor mismatch crisis, where the jobs that are available and the skill sets and the willingness of the people in general to take those jobs aren't matching up, right?
Okay. I put another tweet in the private chat from Jack Pacific, so you can see what I mean, because I'm getting these are the signals that I'm just getting on my Twitter feed, and it's like these mutually contradicting narratives. It's one that it's like, well, here's one. Okay, here Panda Express are putting out applications, like they're trying to get laborers in to fill positions, right? And the people are on one hand they're complaining that they don't want to take these positions, like this is like undignified. This didn't work at Panda Express. It's not the job for an adult. It's low status. And like Oral McIntyre saying that, oh well, you're wondering why people are flocking to Andrew Tate when you're telling them to work at Panda Express because only losers work there, right? Okay, so
hang on, none of these are grunt work.
Right?
None of these are grunt work.
The point is really, I mean, if you have an education, like if you and a lot of at least to a higher degree, if you're white in the United States, you're much likely to have a college degree or something that would qualify you for a lead position there, and not like a low education position. But this isn't the point. Like, they're not saying that you shouldn't take the grunt jobs. They're saying that like young men are going to be radicalized to become like Andrew Tate because you're telling them to take jobs like this, right? And then they're also complaining that they're trying to get in immigrants to take those jobs when they themselves think those jobs are beneath them. Right? So like
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
just kind of done listening to complaints about the economy from Americans. It's a non-existent issue, really. There are other issues like with social trust and with like the direction of the society, with lack of structure, lack of meaning. But the economy it's kind of, this is not a thing. Like this isn't
Yeah, but the problem
issue.
again, the problem isn't. The problem here is the mismatch, right? The mismatch in all axes, in location, in education, in what was basically promised, right? So if the trajectory of like a young, oh, I guess it will be like an old millennial or like an old Zoomer, a young millennial or old Zoomer, I'm flipping it, I guess, is to be told to go to university because you don't want to flip burgers, right? And you're socially, let's be lefty for a moment, you're socially basically being molded socially from birth by your boomer parents, more or less, or your Gen X parents, I suppose, that, you know, flipping burgers isn't worthwhile. That's not a worthwhile thing to do, right? Even for, you know, a temporary amount of time, let's say 5 years to get ahead or something, right? I say temporary, but 5 years in like a career, right, is not that much. So you go to college to, you know, get some degree that no one wants, and then you find out that you went into debt. You're going to spend like the next 60 years paying off your student loan debt, and the only work available to you is the burger flipping, right?
Well, but these jobs aren't burger flipping, right? And I mean, of course, you might have to take.
No, these jobs aren't burger flipping, but you're not going to get these jobs because you have the wrong skill set, right?
Well, but I think you're more likely to have the right skill set for this if you have a college degree, unless it's like underwater basket weaving or what these people are talking about, right? But again, like if you pick these bad educations,
but you also have to put yourself into the mind of someone who's been socially engineered to think that doing these
I
kinds
get
of
it, but the
jobs
question is like, what jobs did their parents have that were so much cooler than this? That's kind of my question for these people. Like what do they expect? Because I put out the question on Twitter, like, you know, not everybody can be a philosopher, king, schizo, like what if autist, or not everybody can make video essays, right? You can't have all of the people from the dissident right move to an island and run an economy on demoralization basically of each other, right? You have to actually do something. So and I ask questions, and like every response is like a joke response. Like I want to be like head of operations of deportations or something, but it's like there's nobody's actually talking about okay, with a few
in terms of
exceptions,
like what you actually want to do. Yeah,
nobody's actually.
No, I mean,
if
you're actually serious about the things you're talking about, you have to be willing to, you know, picture yourself as a peasant, right? Because there's a good reason you might end up.
These are the same people who are talking about how much more liberated and how much more agency you have being a serf under a lord, toiling at a farm, like or something. How much better it would be to be like a slave than to work in the city or something. And while they're still sort of complaining about.
But see, that's the difference.
100K.
You have to be cool like me and say that you actually enjoyed it more. That's the
that's
the kicker,
kind of the
right?
idea. Then it was a simpler life, you know, and it would have been more enjoyable.
And that's I mean that's the edgy take, I suppose, will be that, well, most people, I think, enjoyed the simpler life more than the complex one, but society has become more and more complex.
Of course, if they wanted to be these kind of like Nietzschean action man Ubermenches, they could join the military or some security stuff. But of course, they're not doing that either. But if you look at the recruitment numbers, they're not signing up to shoot guns.
Can I take some
security?
Some pushback from the chat here? I'm not going to take the.
Now, of course, we're going to get. I'm
not going to like highlight people who are calling you stupid or anything, but there are some questions. So we'll start with Nordan on. Does Ludwig deny the objective fact that wages have not kept up with the cost of living in the US since the 1970s?
Well, it has actually. That graph that sort of people are showing around, it's showing inflation on one axis and not showing inflation on the other axis. So, I mean, there's a lot of this stuff. I wish I had the graph, but these sort of meme graphs that these people are showing in various places. I mean, you just have to ask yourself the question, like, and here's more of these kind of contradictory dissident right narratives that you're getting. So they say we don't want to live in the economic zone. And what does that mean, right? It means that people are treating your country as economic zone. Why? Because they want to go there to make money. And when they go there, they make a lot of money. And that's why they're there. While at the same time saying that the economy sucks and is on the verge of collapse. Like, every week is like the collapse is imminent. While at the same time, people are pouring over across the border to work and make money. There's something that doesn't work. Like, one of those things can be true. Not both. So it's again, their economy is stronger than any economy in the Western world, really, than any other place. They have problems in terms of infrastructure, like safety nets, that they lack public services.
Yeah, and insane inequality.
In terms of like finding work and making money, they're still the best. There's no one else that compares, at least when you look at the numbers. And of course, if you can
sure, I mean, if you're willing, if you're willing to wade in shit, right? America's the best place to do it and make a lot of money, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of like, again, what are these immigrants coming for? They're not coming for the excellent social service. It's not like Europe where they're just going to go on welfare. Like, they're coming there to wade in shit so they can make money for themselves. So on some level, this has to work. Again, it can't be both. It can't be both.
I mean, literally wade in shit. I'm not sure if the H-1B is going to, sewage, honestly. But maybe we could look at it.
It is going to people like this. You're seeing that these aren't like low-skilled, that they're trying to do, they're trying to get with the H-1B program. They are trying to get relatively, high-skilled.
Well, but then you're back at the why do you want to import high-skilled foreign workers when you could just actually work to skill up the people you have?
Well, they don't want it. I mean, we've just talked about it. They're sitting and talking about, I'd rather be Andrew Tate and sodomize girls and pimp and run pyramid schemes than be
but then, I mean,
manager. Like,
that's just as much of a vibes argument as the other side, right? Saying that people don't want to work is just as much
I'm genuinely more convinced of that hypothesis, just looking at these stuff, looking at all this nonsense that's coming out of this sphere with regards to this question. The question, okay, they want to live at home and be video game streamers and have like a trad wife who cooks them dinner or something like that. What's the Always Sunny in Philadelphia, the bang?
So what about housing then? Hasn't housing like ballooned compared to
owning houses is more expensive, but it's of course also dependent on location, right? Some of these people have,
but then you're back at the house that I can afford is not in a place that I can work, right?
Yeah, of course the expectations is also there. Like, if you look at what an American considers like a normal house, I mean, if you've flown over, when you fly into the United States and you look down, you see all these McMansions with the pools in the backyard.
Yeah.
And of course they don't want to live in the pods either, right? We talked about the like we showed that video once with the guy who was building these kind of like small, tightly placed houses. Yeah. And they don't want to live in those because that would be the meaning. So we're getting back to kind of the same stuff. They don't want to live in the houses because they're pods. They don't want to do the jobs because they're gay, and they don't want to sleep with the women because they've been ran through by 100 men. And it's all kind of it's kind of bullshit in a sense. It just has nothing to do with the actual issue.
It's hard to parse, because I understand what you're saying, that there's an aspect of this which is quote extremely online, right? But I think there's an aspect of this that is also real, right? But it's being lost in the sort of, in all of the noise, because you have the people, because this is basically the same argument that's been going on for a long time on Twitter between the remaining lefties and the right, is that the remaining lefties will point to economic graphs in a way that you're doing now, and saying that everything on paper should be working out, right? And then the right says, well, but it feels like it isn't. And I can't find any jobs.
It feels like it isn't because you're taking in media that's telling you that society is collapsing tomorrow, every day, right? And I mean that was
Sure.
interesting because I was listening to Joe Rogan in like
But
from
then why
2014.
are so many parts of the US struggling then? Right? If the economy as a whole is doing well, why are so many individual places struggling in the same way that the UK
Well,
is
it's
struggling in
usually
terms
the
of
lack of
infrastructure?
public infrastructure. I think lack of social safety nets, which you have.
Because you
say places
just
like
think
Northern Europe.
that the local governments, the state governments, aren't able to do enough.
Well, they're underfunded, right? I mean, if you have low taxes, then you just have less services typically. And of course, there's a lot of other things like you get the free flow of drugs that's going through the United States, for example, is taking a toll on people. There's a lot of really destructive impulses that can, because of a lot of like market freedom and social freedom, it can just kind of just ravage through communities very quickly, and stuff is built up and then it's broken down again. So
what you're saying, okay, so let's say
in the system.
Nordon on her says that median household income in 1980 was 22K a year, assume dollars. Median household income in 2024 is 77K. But a median house cost has like 10 times, right? But you're saying that, well, this is how it is for everyone else.
Well, I mean, just bring up the numbers again. Right,
I'm not saying this specific number, but what you're saying is that Bill Wilson here says my friends can afford to live alone, and you're saying that, well, that's how it is for everyone else everywhere else on Earth.
You have to realize that like the interest rate in the 1980s was something different than it is now. Like this, the housing prices is a lot of the product of the interest rate.
Come on, I mean, it was like a 40% interest rate, but it was 40% interest rate on like a tenth of the price that it is today. I mean, the actual value number is
that when you bring the interest rate down, you increase the price of the house because people can borrow more, and that allows people to buy. That increases the demand for houses. So it's really sort of monetary thing that people, okay, they cost more, but you can also borrow a lot more money at cheaper rates to buy these houses. I mean, it's the same in almost every Western country where the interest rate, in the, what was it in the 80s? Like it was above 10. At least it was just crazy.
Yeah, again, right? And the actual monetary value you were paying interest on was so much lower that the actual monetary value you're paying in individual dollars was lower than it is today, comparatively, right?
Well, the thing is that
the interest rate was higher, but the amount of money compared to how much you're making, right, was lower as well.
That's the problem, is that it's easier to borrow more money when the interest rate is lower, right? And that means that there's more money into it. And
but borrowing money isn't a good thing, right?
Well, it is if you have a low interest rate, right? Because the value of the house appreciates over time.
Well, but I mean, like, it's not a very healthy thing to balloon your economy like that.
Well, that's what, maybe it isn't, but that's what everybody has done, right? And that's kind of what's reflected in those house prices, is that people are borrowing money at almost, well, if you're borrowing at 2% interest, it's basically free money, right? Because money inflates at like 2 to 3% per year, even more. So like the value of the house that you're buying is going up faster than the money that you borrowed it for. And I know that this is a problem. And I'm all for like trying to increase supply of housing, but housing isn't the only thing in the economy. But you have other things like, say, like computers, electronics, cars. I mean, pretty much everything else, but like, say, housing has sort of dropped. If you want to look at the price of a computer in the 80s, for example, contra a laptop now or something like it. I mean, what you can get for your money in terms of stuff that's not housing is it's ridiculous.
Sure. Let's see here. Some other comments. I'm not sure if Nudged Unit is joking. He's saying we have to go back to first principles. Is it just Russian propaganda that you're being replaced and will probably never own a house? Let's see here.
Well, immigration is. Immigration is real, right? So, but I mean, if you're going to own the house,
the impact of immigration.
Let's say if you aren't taking the 100K Panda Express job, you're probably not going to own a house.
No, that's true. Unless you get a job that you're actually, matching your degree,
a strategy,
right?
Like the historical norm has not been to own your own house from your 20. Yeah. Like most of history, you lived in the same house as your family. maybe throughout your whole life, or you just inherited
Yeah,
your
yeah.
parents' house. So the
Or you would expand on the lot, right?
Yeah, the expanding it, the expectation that everybody is gonna own their own house in the 20s or something, like in the post-war years. I mean, that existed in like a tiny fraction of.
But I mean, it's
history.
yeah. But I just can't get that to make sense, though. You were saying that, you know, everything else is cheaper, right? Like the computer I buy is cheaper relatively, and especially if you account for what it can do, contra what it could do in the 1980s. But it's like, it doesn't matter if one post of my budget has like ballooned 10 times, right? It doesn't matter that everything else is a bit less expensive if 2 or 3 of my budget posts has increased by more than those things are becoming cheaper.
Well, I'll just look at some things. I've found a list. If you wanted to buy like a Commodore 64 computer in the 1980s, that would have been $595. And how's that? Let's say, I just need to find adjusted for inflation here. An IBM computer would have been like $1,500 in 80s money.
Yeah, what's the calculator in 1980?
Inflation since like the 80s. That's
it's that's about almost $4. So you can 4 times it. Right?
So yeah, I mean that would have been like, yeah, you would pay $2,000 for a computer, or $5,000 or something for a computer.
So yeah, if I buy a MacBook, right, I'm paying adjusted for inflation, I'm paying, you know, let's say like $3,000 less than I would pay for the IBM computer, right? But my housing costs have gone up with, you know, exponentially more than 3,000. So it doesn't really matter that the laptop is cheaper.
Well, other things are cheaper as well, right? I mean, how much housing costs? I guess the rents have gone up, but you're not just talking about housing. You talk about clothing, for example.
But housing is kind of important, right?
Other types of of course it's of course it's important, but it's like, I think generally in terms of what you could afford on a certain salary, like the idea that you could people who were richer in the 80s. I mean, it's just not accurate. And what you would get in a house as well would be different, right? You wouldn't be having the same utilities in a house in terms of heating, windows. There's so much stuff that you get in a house now that is a sort of more modern, and well, I mean, the standard would be different than what you'd get in an older house. So, but I understand that, of course, people want more housing, they want more available housing, and it is a supply problem as well, right? Which has to be dealt with. But the idea that it's like, everything is fucked because the house costs money or something, it's I don't buy it in a sense. I mean, you can't afford living alone. Again, people didn't do that through most of history. they having a house to yourself, having an apartment to yourself. This is like a very modern.
Look, I agree that, long-term speaking, if we're saying that America is headed for like a, civilizational decline, as it were, then people are going to have to deal with less. And it's something that we've talked about here in terms of with Norway as well, is that there are challenges ahead that is going to require austerity, and people need to be able to cope with less. But what sort of interests me is that why then is America failing that transition when they're the ones who should be sort of the best equipped to communicate the most effectively to their own voter base, I guess, right?
Well, they aren't. I mean, there's been a complete failure in like institutional trust, and well, I mean, everybody should know that by now. The stuff just doesn't work. You're at the failure point. But I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with the economy being bad. Like, this is kind of my point, that it's just completely secondary to the kind of divisive nature, whether it's demographic stuff, too much immigration, too short of a time. That's a much more likely culprit, or kind of like deracination, loneliness, for example. I think these issues are more likely culprits to why you have institutional breakdown than the economy.
Sure. But it's the old, two things can be true at the same time. I as I said, I agree that long-term thinking people will have to deal with less, and I think that might be good even. But I don't know. I'm not prepared to call all of this bullshit, right?
Yeah, I mean,
just
didn't bring
because
huge...
some unreliable people on Twitter is getting things wrong, it doesn't mean that it's not true. Although, of course, you should be critical of what you read online.
Yeah, I'm just looking at economic data and really the pointing out the contradictory narratives that are being pushed. Which I see a lot of.
No, I agree. It's
sort of circling back to
the
my
problem
first
is
point.
as
I wish
well
I
that
could.
the problem is as well that the U.S. at some point becomes just so big of a problem, or so big of a country, so disparate of a country that it's hard to really talk about it in any sort of like data points kind of stop mattering almost. But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, just as like looking at it from an outsider, and like I said, I make less money than these Chipotle people. I pay more at McDonald's for the same items, and
Yep.
being like fairly well-to-do. That like
you do, but like the median US.
Yeah,
like the manager, but like the median US income is probably like what, like $35,000 or something, which is less than it's probably it probably is in Norway, right? I mean, of course, purchasing power and all that, but
of course, a lot of. Let's see here. I'm just getting the GPT here to spit out some facts. Let's see. As of 2023, the median household income of the United States is $80,000. So
$80,000.
Yeah, which is an increase, say a 4% increase from 2022, which it was $77,000. So yeah,
Where did I get?
It's actually not
from?
again like. Maybe, okay, it's a household income, right? So maybe it's like two people. Say if you have one man makes 55 and the woman makes 35, then you have a household of 80.
Oh, maybe I'm maybe I'm getting like the individual, because I was like, I've looked this up before.
Yeah.
And it's 37. So you're saying like a household with two people.
Typically with two people who live together, right? And that's typically the arrangement. If people think that you're going to buy like a McMansion and live alone or something, then of course housing cost is going to be quite expensive. And of course, but more people are going towards that lifestyle. That's kind of the problem as well, like the changes in priorities and people who want to live alone, which is we've talked about it many times, and I guess that's one of the problems as well, the expectation contra what's actually available.
Yeah. I don't know. It's I'm still kind of feeling the micro mismatch argument more than saying that everything is actually fine.
No, I'm not. I'm not saying it's fine. I'm just saying that when Americans start whining about the economy as like this radicalization factor, I'm just going to ignore it in the future, because after having looked into this stuff, it's like, this is why we're annexing Greenland, like because you're angry about Panda Express.
No, I understand. I understand
for six
where
figures,
you're coming
right?
from.
This is pretty fucking. It's getting pretty ridiculous right now, right? Listening to some of these dissident right commentators and the stuff that they're complaining about, and like the reasons why they think Andrew Tate is a legitimate figure, because they don't want to work as restaurant managers. And they think that you're a boomer if you say something else, while at the same time they don't want to do military or you can't have an economy run on complaining, right?
Javier Olivia says Mike Rowe is right if you want to own a septic pumping company in Missouri. Well, as I said, if you're willing to wade through, if you're willing to wade through shit, you can make a lot of money in the U.S.
I don't want to do anything that's useful. I just want to be a streamer and have Svetlana shipped in from Latvia or something, and be my bang maid. But it's, I mean, yeah, I don't know what more to say. I'm just I think the point stands is that when they're complaining about the economy, I'm just going to keep remembering that they were complaining about 6-figure jobs and saying that you can't like live on 6 figures. It's getting
and that does sound ridiculous, right? So
yeah. Then they're and doing it in such a smug tone as well, like just sitting like, oh, if you're like a boomer, if you're holding the other side of this argument, it's just totally. It's just bonkers.
Nordanon says many conservatives want to support a family on one income, which is increasingly difficult. Yeah, and it's interesting from a Norwegian perspective because that's basically been eradicated as a political sort of move.
Well, I think if you're going to do that, you're going to have to at least gonna have to make a lot of sacrifices. Yeah, definitely. Downscale your consumption. You're probably going to have to. I mean, if you're going to live with a family on one income, you're going to be living at the same kind of living standards as the people who were actually doing that 40 years ago. Actually the same living standards.
Or you have to sort of plan for it for periods or to like build up some wealth and then move to somewhere cheaper. I mean, me and my wife have had those talks about, with baby Walrus. We don't want to send her to kindergarten right away. Maybe she'll take some unpaid leave for a while, and we've had to run the numbers on like how long or how much do we need to have saved up versus how much sort of a hit in living standard are we going to take if it's just my income, right? And it's definitely doable. It's nothing wrong. I mean, once you get to certain sort of stable
I think you have income. A pretty decent middle class job, right? I think you could support a family on, like, if you have one kid and you try to slim in on the expenses a little bit. I think would be completely doable, unless you're living in like
eat a little bit more soup and it should be fine, right? So, again, it's getting to the point where I'm at where I could say, yeah, okay, it's fine if we lose her income for a while. It just means that we aren't going to get a vacation that year, right? It takes time getting to that because buying and furnishing and fixing, so to speak, a house or keeping a house is. I mean, you probably know that better than I do. There's a lot of like startup costs, right?
Absolutely, and. But again, your grandparents probably didn't have overseas vacations either.
They did, right? Actually. They had a house in Spain.
I think they were well-to-do then. In that case,
not really. When
they were young as well.
But sorry, what?
When they were young, or like recently?
No. When they were older. When they were older.
But I mean, like when they were establishing a family, when they were having.
Oh no! My grandfather
go on overseas vacations back then.
With his hands, literally with his hands. He had polio, so he couldn't use his legs.
He's in Ireland.
So he and a couple of buddies basically built their house, right? So I mean, I've seen photos. They built like contraptions for him to load material and then pull himself up a hill with the material.
Bootstraps,
that man was incredibly strong and an inspiration. So
no polio.
No, but you're right. Of course, it requires bootstrapping, and getting to that point is always going to be difficult. And I think if we're holding that lens, I understand that you're saying, telling young men that everything is fucked because the woman you're looking at has probably, slept with 1,000 guys, and you're never going to own a home because you don't make $1 gorillion. That's probably not the way to go.
This is the right wing version of like global warming is going to kill the world in 2 weeks if you don't smash the museum paintings. I mean, it's just not true. There's no reason to have this level of anxiety for this stuff. I think solutions are completely workable for people who are willing to do so. This kind of collapse mongering, at some point, it just gets absurd. I know it's like a cool genre to do, and people are making a lot of money doing this this kind of fear mongering stuff online. But and this is also like a growing thing. I mean, a lot of what I'm doing is just talking about. Yeah, I agree. Agree with Leo. Sorry, I'm getting tired here. It's
No, sorry. I didn't mean to bring that up. I was just sort of hovering over it and I accidentally clicked. Leo says living on one income literally only happened for a very brief moment of history during the 20th century. It's an historical anomaly. I do agree in the sense that there is a certain amount of work that needs to be done, especially if you own a property and divvying up that labor, plus also being able to earn income to pay for other expenses that you can't get off the land, essentially, is required, right?
Like with the one income stuff, you have to realize that with a lot of these people, like the wife would be like an assistant to the husband, like not just being at home with the kids, but like with their jobs. Like say with the doctor profession, the typical solution would be they had like you have a sole proprietorship where the wife and the husband work in the same sole proprietorship, and the wife has like an assistant function. He's like the doctor's assistant to the husband, for example, or she takes his phone calls or something like that. Like she would have been doing work even though it wouldn't have been paid, but it would have been done under like the same legal entity, typically. So yeah, just being at home with the kids, I think that's kind of the other side of the coin. Like with the like lazy Zoomer women who want to do the trad stuff, like. They just don't want to work.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting, and I'm not saying, you're totally wrong. I just disagree with you on some of these things.
I expected as much. I mean, this is like I'm seeing the social media. I'm seeing what's getting a thumbs up, and I'm seeing what's getting left in the dust, so to speak. And this is not an algorithmically optimized viewpoint, but I mean, it's just
no. But I don't want it to be either. I appreciate the viewpoint. But I'm not disagreeing with you because I think Dave the Distributist is right or something.
No, I mean, I'm looking forward to listening to this. If there are any debates coming out of this, what's actually going to be discussed there, or if it's just going to be talking about, boomer bashing, for example. This is a hobby horse, like become a sport almost. But soon the boomers are going to be dead. And what are you going to do then? You have to figure out something else than bashing the boomers and blaming William F. Buckley for why you can't get a job.
Yeah. My governor says, does Scandinavia have a history of one earner household? I thought it was largely agrarian, which means the wife has to work. Yeah, exactly. And this is, we've pushed back at this before because we've said that for Scandinavia, it's very strange to, I mean, when I talk about that we want to do one income for a while, that's for a while, right? Because for like a small period of time, I mean, culturally, we don't have any basis for doing this. It's what Leo said earlier. There's a set amount of work that needs to be done, and the work needs to be divvied up among the household. And usually, I lift the heavy rocks and she does the sewing because that's what we're good at, right? And that's usually how it's been. Let's see here. Getting a property is the hard part about building a house today. Yeah, well, sure. If you want to build a house, yes, definitely. I mean, the dream is to be able to build our own house, but literally, where you want it, there is no property, meaning that you would have to buy a house, raise it, and then build your next house on top of it. But that's incredibly expensive, right? So you need a really large amount of starting capital to do that. Otherwise, you're going to have to pay, well, insane amounts of money for the plot of land, unless you're buying it in the middle of nowhere, which is a possibility. But then, of course, it's working stuff, etc. And I don't necessarily want to move away from my family, especially now with with Baby Walrus. We have a lot of, contact with her, with my parents and my in-laws, and moving away from them just because of, economics feels kind of stupid. Unless we could convince them to come with us and live in like a generational farm or something.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for. I mean, I think that could be a shock for some people. If you're not
it
used
would
to
be
having people
annoying,
that-
but my mother-in-law has actually talked about it. She's like sent my wife sort of like adverts for houses or farms being sold with like multiple houses on them. Like, we could move there, it would be fine. So we'll see. I'm a bit more of a, I like being the master of my own plot of land in that sense, and I don't know how I would like to share that with my in-laws or even my own parents. I enjoy sort of having my own square where I can do what I want.
as is tradition,
As is
or
tradition.
maybe not. Yeah, but I'm
well, I
100%
mean, in
behind that.
Norway there are traditions for that. I mean, usually, especially the oldest would, sorry, the medium, not the oldest, but one of the kids would maybe get a plot of land from extended family right somewhere.
Yep.
All right. Bit more of a city slicker, eh? Well, I mean, we can't all be Leo Borealis, who is building a literal fortress in the middle of the woods. So, in that sense, he's got me beat, right? Costanza, Lord of the Manor, exactly. Okay. Let's see here. I think that's everything. We've gone over the time, so it's time to end the stream. We could probably talk about this for hours, so we might have to revisit this at some point. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for watching. We will be back next week, where I believe I have penciled in Consequent Fry, who's going to come on and talk to us about Germany. So that's going to be fun. We're going to try to get a bit of an overview of German politics, recent goings on, etc. All right. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. That helps the algorithm a little bit. Not necessarily because we want to grow to be huge. YouTube seems to be pretty good at keeping us down anyway. But every time someone watches, I get a little bit of that AdSense money, and that goes towards paying for the few expenses that we do have here. Anything you want to shill before we leave, Luddick?
No, I haven't been able to make any content. I've been a bit busy, but I guess thanks to everybody for tuning in, and have a nice weekend.
I do enjoy LPTV. It's very good takes usually. All right. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.